and go here. Stand by. Hello everybody and welcome to Sonic Talk number 315, recording today live on Wednesday the 29th of May 2013. I'm Nick Batt, editor of SonicState.com, and you are watching this. It's partly brought to you by the wonderful people at oh, that's not him. Isotope Iris. Isotope make the fabulous Iris sort of spectral synthesizer where you can layer up to 4 samples, sound files, and do some amazing things with them. More on that later. And also more on the results of the competition, because we ran a competition last week for haiku, Iris-related haiku. And we're going to have another competition this week because Iris are very kindly donating yet another copy of Iris. I think there's a pattern emerging here, but I'm not supposed to tell anybody because they don't want it to affect sales. Well, hopefully they'll sell more than one a week. But anyway, thank you very much for listening. We'll start. We got 2 guests this week, so I think it's the same as last week actually. So we're kind of back to our cozy threesome. I'll say that in a kind of slightly less yeah, anyway. Dave Spears, G4 Software with his .com modular. You're still you did send me a lovely picture of your new window, but you're not in the room with the window just yet, right?
No, maybe next week. Chris and I moved the Wurlitzer piano, which has also got a built-in speaker and amp in it, and the lunchtime today, and we're both kind of hurting. My shoulders a bit sore.
What,
so
just the EP200A?
No. This is like
what's the matter with you, man?
This is the teacher edition, you know. The one with the...
yes, the one with the huge banner. Yeah, got you.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got that, and I've got 800 dB in there at the minute, but I'm still waiting for the skirting to be done and a door to be put on, actually. So yes, hopefully that will be end of this week, and I might even be in next week.
Wow, cool. Well, G4 Software, of course, makes a fine software instruments, including rack extensions, all sorts of other things too, so do just check them out. And some really smart videos on analog synthesizers coming out there as well, including a little bit on the .com, I think. One or two.
Yeah. Actually, that's interesting, because what is it? I did put a post up the other day saying, what is it about YouTube and this OCD nonsense about changing everything every 5 minutes? God, I went to upload a video the other day and it's like, we're now changing the design completely and you've only got a couple of days to do that, and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, so, yeah. This is the new YouTube 1 channel, which is, yeah, I did that, actually. I've created a new YouTube thing which has got loads of mini Sonic State logos on it for the time being, but apparently it's supposed to increase subscribers by up to 10%.
And we have to do like a video saying what our channel's about. I've just got this.
No. What you do, you can create a short trailer that will only show. That'll be edited highlights that will only show to people who are not subscribed to your channel.
Okay. I just thought I was going to have to sit there and go, "This is a YouTube channel about synthesizers."
Just upload that. That'll be fine. Anyway, back to me, and yes, you can see we've got the blinking lights in the background. Not as pretty. We're not using the ones that were pretty at the top. They're the Chauvet Par 64 LEDs, which have a fade, which are much more pretty. And these ones are the cheap ones we bought from Thomann that just kind of switch on and off. But they're fine, you know. It's just because we've got a shoot tomorrow, we need to change it up. But anyway, let's say hello to Mr. Mark Tinley.
Hello.
Mark Tinley, lightbeing.com, also a collaborator on the TV Mania project, which I assume is going well.
That was quite a long time ago.
Oh, was it? Well, I still mention it. It wasn't that long. It was only a few weeks.
I mean, the release wasn't a long time ago, but the main collaboration, you know, the day in, day out kind of like, what are we going to do today? Let's write another song, blah, blah, blah. That was, yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right, fair enough. But anyway, yeah, tvmaniamusic.com or
Oh, yeah, gosh. Actually, given that it's just been released, actually, no, you're absolutely right.
Good to plug it, yeah. We're just so way ahead of the curve, it feels like yesterday already.
I know.
So, Mark, I see you're slightly different quality of image there.
I've got an HD camera.
Ah, but I think it is. I must say it's not as contrasty, but I think I'm going to suggest that you try the what's it? The UVC dash control. I'm going to write it in here so it's easy to see. Try this UVC dash CTRL dash GUI. If you search for that, it's a little OSX control panel. In fact, if I now switch on the this, it might actually help. If you.
Oh yeah.
There we go. It will. What it does is it allows you control over the contrast of the auto features. So, like for instance, I've got it set up on this camera so that when I do this, it doesn't affect the contrast or the color balance or anything or the autofocus and stuff. So, if you were to cover up your and then whip it away quickly, it would probably take a moment to adjust. It does a little bit. I can see it. You can see it, but take my word for it. It's great, man. But the exciting thing about what you've done, Mark, is actually more to the point. You kind of created what's it called? A Mac.
It's a
ProBook
Mac.
So
it really is a ProBook as well, except it's not a Mac. Well, it is a Mac. Well, it's running a Mac.
So this is a Hackintosh, essentially, right?
I was wrestling with problems with my MacBook Pro, and I thought I'm going to have to rebuild this machine. And then I was thinking, should I put Mountain Lion on it? And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. And then I kind of thought, and then I thought, well, maybe I should buy a new MacBook Pro. And then I thought, well, what if I just find out what people are running OS X on PC-wise? So I thought it might be an interesting little research project just to see, you know, if it's possible to do it. So I went onto all the forums and I found this guy called Tony Mac.
Is that this guy? Tony Mac X86, yeah. That guy.
So I found him and I looked in the laptop section and it said most recommended laptop is an HP ProBook 4530S. So I went, okay, I'll look for one of those on eBay, and I paid 200 quid, which is $300 roughly. And then, I mean, one of the problems that I have is that I still need to run Snow Leopard because I have things in PowerPC, so I need Rosetta. So if I put Mountain Lion on my laptop, I suddenly lose access to all those things. So I thought, well, when I looked through all the information, it said it's very easy to set up. You can run Snow Leopard or Lion or Mountain Lion on it. So I thought it would be an interesting experiment to try and do that. So that's what I've done, and here I am. I'm in Mountain Lion at the moment, but I've also got a partition with Snow Leopard in it. And it took... Snow Leopard did take quite a long time to set up. It took 1 hour.
Good Lord. Well, that's
format drive, install it, update it to 10.6.8, get the whole thing working, apart from Bluetooth and the internal microphone. And then I thought, and having succeeded with Snow Leopard, I thought I should probably try Mountain Lion just for the hell of it. I mean, I wanted to run Snow Leopard on a laptop, not Mountain Lion, but now I've got both because I set Mountain Lion up and that took about 30 minutes. It's just unbelievable.
So how do you do the multi-partition thing? I suppose, does Boot Camp not get involved in that?
Well, you can't do this if you don't already have a Mac. So if you haven't got a Mac, you're probably going to have a difficulty setting it up because you need to be able to run disk utility. I suppose, I mean...
You could do it on somebody else's, I suppose.
Yeah, you might be able to do it on someone else's. And if you're going to run Mountain Lion on it, they don't advocate stealing Mountain Lion. That's not what this is about. It's more of an experiment just to see what's possible in terms of running things on PC hardware. So you have to go to the App Store and you have to buy Mountain Lion. So obviously you need access to a Snow Leopard or a Lion computer to get to the App Store to buy it. And then you can make a boot USB stick, but again you need to be able to run Mac OS to do that. I suppose you could get the boot CD and you could boot into Snow Leopard. If you had the Snow Leopard DVD disc, you could boot into that and you could format your hard drive using the disk utility on the CD.
Yeah.
Then you could probably go that way, but I don't think I could have managed this without already owning a couple of Macs because I just kind of.
So what kind of processor power did you get for your 200 quid? Is it an i3?
It's an i3, yeah.
Right. Okay. And what about?
Then I sort of thought, well, maybe I could run a faster computer. So I looked at the different options, and this particular computer can go up to an i7 2670QM, or it might be a 2760QM, which is 2.2 gigahertz quad-core i7. And then if you ran it on Geekbench, it would run at about 11,000, which is faster than a MacBook Air. And I was thinking, well, hang on a minute, how much do they cost? So I looked on eBay, and they're about £100. So for £300, I could be running a computer that's as fast as a MacBook Air.
That's interesting. I'm guessing. I mean, there are some legal issues, presumably, in that. All sort of, the EULA and what have you. What about updates and things like that?
I haven't read the EULA, so I don't know. I imagine that the end user license agreement probably says you are not allowed to use this software on anything other than an Apple computer. But I haven't read that anywhere, and it's such a long agreement, isn't it? I don't know what it says really, but.
Well, I think that, I'm pretty sure ignorance is a pretty good defence case.
I mean, I'm not doing it because I want to do Apple out of any revenue. I've already got an Apple computer, which I bought and paid for. So, I've got 5 Apple computers, which I bought and paid for. I'm just really interested in whether or not it's possible and what's, I want to try recording music on it and just see if it holds up, because it would be interesting to. I mean. There are a couple of issues, and one issue is I'm running VMware on it to run my PC, and my PC runs Fruity Loops and it runs SoundForge.
Right.
When I run Fruity Loops, if I try and run the ASIO driver, it goes absolutely mental and crashes the whole machine. And I guess that's because because VMware talks to the hardware directly, so it's expecting to see an Apple hardware at the end of its driver, isn't it? And then if I'm running ASIO within my PC and it's trying to find an Apple hardware, and I'm trying to get my latency right down to like 2 or 3 milliseconds, just won't do it. It won't even do long latency though.
Right. So the sound drivers are a bit of an issue though. But that's kind
of not. It doesn't seem to be in Logic. In Logic Pro, it's not. Sound driver seems to work fine, and I can play the keys and I can play the computer keyboard and get like no latency at all, really, or not that I can notice. Or I can plug a USB keyboard straight into it and just play on that, and it just feels like, almost as fast as any synth, I suppose. So it's probably down in the 32 what's it, right? I don't know what the numbers are.
Well, that's cool though. So because it always used to be, when I looked at it into the past, it was so obscure and information. So this TonyMacX86.com is the place to have a look at that kind of stuff. I know.
I think the trick is to go and look and see who's supporting it, because there's a whole team of them on there playing around with this, and I did do a Dell Mini before. I experimented with that because I thought it would be nice to have a very small computer running OS X, and that was just disastrous. I mean, it sort of works, but sometimes it comes on and the sound's not on, and other times it comes on and it won't connect to Wi-Fi, and trying to find the right information.
There's a lot. There's tons of it here, isn't there? He's got, it's a mine of it.
Yeah, well, these guys seem to be collaborating on writing an installer specifically designed to put the kernel extensions for this specific computer together. So that's what makes it work, I think. The fact that the installer for the HP ProBook was dated like May the 9th or something, and we're at the end of May, aren't we? A couple of weeks later, so it's constantly being updated, constantly being supported. When I first set it up, I got a very slow benchmark on Geekbench, and I thought, I'm sure this is slower than my MacBook now. So I went on the forum and said, this is my result, and they said, oh, try this, and they just emailed me a different kernel extension, and I put that in a folder, and another thing that went in the extras folder, and suddenly, bam, it was really fast. So
that's interesting. Interesting. I know, Dave.
It's like having support as well.
That's cool. I mean, Dave, you're a developer, right? So, I mean, do you get kind of people saying, I'm running it on a kind of custom... I mean, it makes that sort of thing almost impossible. I suppose that's the problem. I mean, you can't really support non-supported platforms. But have you ever tried anything like this, or sort of seen anybody running it successfully?
A couple of times, yeah. And in fact, it's interesting what Mark's saying, because literally John is talking about getting a couple of automated build machines, we looked at the Mac Minis purely so he can kind of continue working on his main Mac. But this may be a really good, nice, cost-effective solution. In fact, I might talk to Mark afterwards about building us one.
What would you use that for? I mean, essentially, what would it kind of make sense? Would it be more of a multi-OS machine that just made it easier for you to switch, or is it kind of have a specific purpose?
Really, I think for compiling and uploading builds to our own server. So obviously, if John's working on something, he can just shunt that across to one of these kind of lowly Macs, and it's not draining his big Mac of resources the whole time.
Right. So it's like just got an automated process on it that deals with that kind of thing for running.
Yeah.
So it would need to run Xcode or something like that, so it would be the compiling point, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I think all of these things, multi-purpose machines. I mean, we've talked about this before, haven't we? The kind of idea, the notion that the platform, it should be really platform agnostic. It's just how much juice you've got, really. I suppose that would be the ideal scenario.
Well, I mean, we're always, having to kind of every time a new OS comes out, it pretty much means another set of computers for us, because obviously we're continually having to run Mountain Lion, Billy Goat, Monkey Puzzle Tree, or whatever it's going to be called. Do you know what I mean? I mean, we can't deprecate anything for years.
Therein lies a problem.
Because the new ones won't run.
I bought a Mac Mini, and I need to be able to access Snow Leopard, and I can't put Snow Leopard on my Mac Mini without hacking it in some way, which seems like a really odd thing to have to do to a computer I just paid 700 quid for or something. It just won't run Snow Leopard because it's got HD 4000 graphics, and there's no support for it in Snow Leopard, so it wouldn't.
Mark,
I can't go backwards.
Somebody's got notifications going off all the time.
Sorry.
I can just hear it. It's like pling plong.
Turned it off.
Okay, thank you. That's an interesting point, isn't it? Because, for certainly from my point of view, I used to run. I had some software on my previous MacBook that used to run under Rosetta that won't anymore, so it's gone. And that's the sort of thing that kind of you miss, really, isn't it? So definitely makes sense.
I mean, I can't not have that. And then the other thing is, what I've done on this machine is I've put Logic 9 on the Mountain Lion partition, and on the Snow Leopard partition, I installed Logic 7, and then dragged across a version of Logic 6, which means that if I've got something from a really old Logic project, which I need to load up, I no longer need to go and find my G4 Mac to load it. I can load it in that side of the partition, save it somewhere, and then just flip over into the other side of the operating, into the other partition, to the other operating system, and then I have to load it and save it in 6 before it will load in 9. If that makes any sense.
It's just a drag, isn't it? I guess what you really want is to put that all on an SSD, so booting between OSs is just like this. That would be the way to do it. So it's just almost like switch it off, switch it on again very quickly in a matter of seconds. But as I discovered, I put an SSD in our Mac Pro here, thinking, oh look, that'll be good. And I realised it's so old, it's only got eSATA. It's not eSATA 2, whereas the drive can run like 3 or 4 times faster than the controller can handle it. So it actually boots at the same speed as a hard disk. So it's like, oh. So for me
what's that then? What's the difference between eSATA and eSATA 2? How would you know what?
I don't know. It's just the bus speed. So it goes much faster, basically. The drive is capable of going much faster than the controller is. I could get a card for the Mac Pro and then run the drive off that, and then it would fly, but that would mean another.
Well, then you've got things hanging off everywhere, though, haven't you?
Yeah, sort of all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just like bit of a. But anyway, I mean, at least it's got no moving parts and should last a little while.
I mean, I suppose the other thing as well is I've got like Pro Tools 8 still, and Pro Tools 8 won't run on anything other than Snow Leopard. And I only use Pro Tools so that when somebody sends me a session and says, right, we're doing a remix, here's the session, and they haven't turned it into stems, I need to get in and sort of look and see what they did and turn it into linear tracks I can drag into Logic to play around with. And I don't want to buy Pro Tools 9, 10 or 11 just to transfer sessions, because that seems insane.
Yeah, it's a bit of an exotic luxury. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. Mark has kindly written us an article. We're just going to go through it and remove any possible. We're having it scanned for legality reasons, but I'm pretty sure it's right, because it's an interesting take on it. And if this Tony Mac X86 can exist, I'm pretty sure we can publish an article about someone who's done it and just the reasons why they did it and how easy or difficult it was. So stay tuned.
Well,
for
hopefully Apple will see that. I'm really not. It's really not about trying to screw anybody over. It's all about playing around with, experimenting with technology. It's a very steep learning curve, and I enjoy steep learning curves and actually coming out the end of it and having the satisfaction of being able to make something work and go, wow, that's kind of amazing and I like Apple, and I've got lots of Apple computers, and last time they knocked on my door, they brought me a new battery for my PowerBook G4, so
good for you.
If they come knocking on the door, I'll have to throw it in the bath or something.
No.
Don't know anything about it.
Don't know, yeah.
It wasn't me.
Right. Well, I think what we should do is we'll now have a message from our sponsor. Of course, as we know, Isotope are sponsoring the show. And we do have news of the winner of the competition and also news of another competition, which I will say after these words from our sponsor. So if I press this button, we should have an ad coming along fairly soon. Might take a little while to get going because the video sometimes seems to... I press it again. Here we go. This is Isotope, natural intuitive selection and audio visibility. You can manipulate your audio visually. You can do all sorts of things, draw and select individual events with Isotope Iris, lasso tool, shape shifting, apply synthesis controls to your selections and layers, shape and morph new textures. You can sculpt sound and enjoy warm, lush filters, delays, reverbs, choruses, distortions for each layer. There's an awful lot of stuff you could do, even to the basic sounds, after you've turn them into the way that you want them to and manipulate them. There's lots of sound libraries as well. We've got the sounds of wood, glass, food, toys, voice, altered and prepared objects, as well as crazy modular synthesizers, the Iris expansion packs well worth looking at. You can download a free demo of Isotope Iris and sort of explore this visual synthesis world. It really is a kind of unique experience. Free 10-day demo, isotopeiris.com. If I push this fader up here, yes. Isotope.com/iris. Check it out. It's definitely worth a check. And also last week we did have a competition which was brilliantly conceived by Kim at Isotope herself. Said, I know, let's get them to write a haiku poem on the subject of Iris. And I tell you what, I mean, we must have had 70 entries. Let's go bonkers. And some of them were great. Some of them weren't so great. Some of them rather were trying to pull on the same things as like, I'm skint, I need a copy, can I have it? In haiku form, which it's not going to work twice, I just have to say. So the winner this week is called GJ Ophid. Oh, if I can pronounce this. Why does the winner have to have a difficult to pronounce name? DJ Ophidian Official. And he posted this 4 days ago, and this is his haiku. What is this I see? A shape, an inspiring form. I need to hear it. And that was a favourite of both myself and Kim. So that's why it wins. So I will contact that person and they will give me some details and I can get them credited with the stuff and they can download the copy and enjoy it. And last week we were talking about some 80s bands and there were some great 80s sort of imaginary 80s tribute band names coming into the chat room, one of which was a Sock of Flea Girls, which I thought made me think... That has to be an Iris competition. It's got nothing to do with Iris itself, apart from the fact that, you know, the 80s was obviously full of new synthesizers and interesting technology. So that's basically as tenuous a link as there is. So this week, in the comments below, I'd like you to leave an imaginary 80s tribute band, and the funniest, most amusing, whatever one that we pick will win a copy of Iris. So, yeah, just to give you an idea, for instance, a Sock of Flea Girls. And there was also another one last week, which I can't say, but was based on Wet, 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 which was extremely amusing. But I can't say it because it would mean that we'd actually end up with parental guidance.
We should have a bonus prize, bonus prize for anybody that actually records a whole song in the style of.
Well, yeah, no, that's asking a lot. I can't really commit to that because basically we haven't got anything to give. But Iris Isotope 2. So once again, imaginary.
We could give them a 15-minute slot on the show, couldn't we?
Maybe.
They could come and explain how they deconstructed the style of that band and came up with something that sounded like it.
Yes, Mark, what you're doing is creating a whole world of judging and stuff that I'm not sure I've got time for at the moment. Maybe at the end or at a milestone we could do something like that. That's a good idea, though. but maybe not for next week.
I thought I was creating an interesting segue into the next topic.
You are, but I was trying to finish the competition. I want to make sure that people understand. So, imaginary 80s tribute band name in the comments below, either on YouTube or in the comments for the Sonic State, where this is posted on Sonic State. But thank you, Mark. You're indeed right. The next topic is the deconstructing classic tracks. Now, I think I've got a video for this. Let me see if I can play that. Yeah, here we go. This is by Point Blank. It's part of their electronic music course. It's based in London. It's a London school. They've done some really good videos recently, actually. And this is
I'm Ski Oakenfull.
Ski Oakenfull.
Online.
I'll let him talk.
Composer and keyboard player, and I've worked with bands and artists like Incognito, The Bays, and Joey Negro. And you're watching Electronic Music Composition.
So the idea is what they're going to do is they deconstruct a track, sort of show you how it's put together and kind of dissect the arrangement and the chords. I'm not going to play it all because I'll get into trouble and I don't want the YouTube police on my case. So the but it got me thinking about this whole concept of deconstruction. The mining the mining of the multi-tracks and what have you is a really, really good way of learning how to put things together. And I've noticed that certainly Propellerheads have done it to a great extent, really well. When they did their, what's that, month of May, wasn't it? Music Production May, where they just basically had people on every day, and it was just like a festival of Propellerheads. And there was a really, really, DJ Lucky Date did some really, really good stuff, and it was just fascinating. And I just wonder whether or not, you find that a good way to learn yourselves, and perhaps what you'd actually like to get your hands on as a multi-track, or I'm thinking more of a kind of session, so you can see how they did something rather than just you really like Stevie Wonder, Dave.
Yes, the Stevie Wonder one, the Superstition one that I got of Stevie Wonder's was amazing. It's like 8 tracks of clavy. I kind of wonder at what point the engineer went, we've probably got enough clavy now. But no, I've got quite an extensive collection. It's a bit of a kind of trade that goes on amongst me and a few musos and me. And they are really fascinating. I think actually more fascinating because of the mastering that's involved and the mix engineering. When you really start to dissect these things in their very kind of raw state, they're pretty rough. And it's how that has turned into this incredibly kind of glossy, cohesive project. I'm more intrigued by... There's a guy, in fact, it's quite appropriate in that there's a guy I'm working with at the minute who is just amazing at deconstructing old classic tracks. No multi-tracks involved. He sent me, he did an Ultravox track, and I swear it's, it could be Billy playing everything pretty much. And then he sent me a Kraftwerk track, and the Kraftwerk track, in fact, I'm trying to persuade him right now. He uses all our instruments and he just kind of creates the patches to replicate these old tracks, and they are utterly, utterly brilliant. And I'm trying to persuade him to kind of let me film either him or for him to give us the patches and me kind of talk through people, because that is quite stunning.
Can you do a sound pack as well?
Oh yeah, that's a great
Kraftwerk sound pack.
Yeah, I mean, it really would be. I can't tell the difference between the track that he's given me and the original track.
That's a great idea. John Van Eaton is on fire in the chat room. Now all we've got is just people posting 80s tribute bands, which are just, I'm sorry, they're very distracting. I mean, I'm just going to, they're hungry. Durex. Joanne's hungry like a MILF.
Hey!
it's getting a bit out of hand. No more clues. You're just going to have to do it yourself. Yes, I think that's a really good idea, particularly for you guys, because obviously, it showcases the stuff that you do. I mean, I think in terms of DAWs and the way, when you hear and you can see how people manipulate and use, because I don't know about you or you, Mark, but when I'm coming at things from a kind of, I'm not a classically trained engineer or musician or anything, but I'm sure I follow certain conventions. And when you see other people just completely ignoring them and doing things completely wrongly, but getting these great effects, that's kind of what I find quite inspiring. I
think, well, first of all, I need to throw some passive aggression out into the world, and that is like Ski Oakenfull. Do you think that is his real name? Because
I'm
it's
not
a
sure.
very clever play on Paul Oakenfold and Adamski, isn't it? It's like if you were to think,
yeah.
I'm going to be a producer and I want people to remember my name. I want to be memorable. I know, I'll call myself Ski Oakenfold.
Could be. He's very good though. They did this really good Propeller Heads one where they just created
Well,
not Propeller Heads, Push, where they just.
He's annoyingly good, isn't he?
Yes.
So I'm. My passive aggression is like, I mean, like you, I'm not really a musician. I watched him go like, this track is blah, 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 blah. He goes, let's work out what key it's in. And then it's, all right, this one's in F sharp minor or whatever it was. And I'm just kind of like, how did he do that? And I'm like really annoyed because if I try to work that out, I'll be there. I've got software that does it. So I've got a piece of software called something like Core Data, which you run across the track on the PC and it works out what all the chords are in different sections of the song. But then even if I've got all the chords, it takes me like maybe 3 hours to work out the key signature. And the only way I can really do it is to just try and play a major scale on the keyboard and then transpose it till I can play all the white notes over the song and none of them clash. So that can take quite a long time because I don't know, while I can sort of hear it, I sort of can't. So and then I don't really know if it's in major or minor. So I always anything I work out always works out to be in a major key eventually, and I always just transpose the keyboard till I can play all white notes over it, and then then I go, okay, it's in my sort of C major, but it might be A minor, really.
Yeah, I got you. I must admit, whenever we used to get those kind of mixes in at the studio when I was doing a lot of remixes, and some of them had like too many chords, I used to just go and ask Will Gregory, who was sharing the studio, who's one half a golf rap, Berkeley school trainer. I said, Will, can you just work these chords out for me and play them into the sequencer so then I can manipulate them, and then that would be fine. So if there's any jazziness going on, he would sort it out for me. So. But
I love working with Nick Rhodes because one of the things he does is he'll stand there in front of the keyboard and he'll work out the chords, and then he'll go, okay, that's that, and this is this, this is this, and then he just goes, I know, let's really, and I won't say the word, F them up. What would happen if we do this? And he just goes, cronk, and then you kind of like go, ooh, and then you go, actually, that works really well. And then you put it somewhere underneath, and then it's something that's like doing something. A
counter.
Like we're so used to hearing things in thirds and fifths and sevenths, and we're so used to hearing like pure melodic resonances happening underneath music. If suddenly something's not doing a pure melodic resonance and it's pulling or pushing in a really weird way, you listen to the track and then you go, what happened there? And you put it on and you listen to it again, and then you go, what is that? And then you sort of spend a lot of time listening to something over and over again. And I think it's a hidden essence of pop that people don't kind of notice, is that lots of pop music's written by people who aren't musicians.
Well,
so the second track, when he's working out that Aluna George track, which I have to say is awesome. I love that track.
Is it this one? Hold on, because I found this and I just wanted to play because I wanted to know if it was this one. Is it this one?
Me to be heads or tails. I say no way, try again.
No, doesn't sound like it.
I should be happy.
I better stop there because it's going to get me into trouble. Oh, well, that's annoying.
There's
something else.
I've got it on here because I can't play you the video. It's this one.
Sounds like popcorn.
Yeah,
I'm just looking for a couple of these.
It's the second song or the second video on that page you sent a link for that he deconstructs, and it's kind of like it's like all the good things about 80s acid house, but without the 303, and it's bouncy and happy, and it reminded me of Big Fun a little bit, and it's just really cute and cool. It's like
it's this one. So the one I looked at was
George. It's called.
Right. I was Deconstructed White Noise by Disclosure featuring Aluna George.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So he did the thing over that where he went, let's work out what key this is in, and he went, and he went, this is in F, something major or minor or whatever it was, and then he said, right, so let's work out the chords, and then he said, so this is.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then he was going, so this is a sus fourth chord, and then he said, oh, but they left that note out. And I thought, well, they didn't know it was a sus fourth, and they probably didn't leave that note out. They probably found something they liked and played it, and then they went somewhere else. And he said, and then they played a such and such, and this was a this, and they left this out.
He's got
So
a
he
great
said
little.
they're leaving notes out of the chords.
He's got a great little shot here. I don't know if you see, is his physical keyboard with a kind of MIDI one above it with all the notes on it that shows which ones he's playing. That's a really neat educational tool. I'm going to have to steal that.
That's where my passive aggression came from.
Because you
He's
just
really,
thought,
really good player.
well, yeah, well, he's a keyboard player, but I suppose that's going to work.
So I suppose my point being that he's deconstructing it and he's trying to make it musical when perhaps it wasn't, because he's also talking about this something or other's got thirds and fifths in it, and then it goes up a third, and it must go up on a pitch bend wheel, and he's trying to make trying to assign musicality to something which was probably written by people who weren't musicians. And the reason why that song is so cool is because it leaves a whole load of musical rules out.
Oh my God! Sorry, I'm really distracted because they're going crazy in the chat room. There's some really brilliant ones. Fat Benatar, Bon Jehovah, but the best one so far, it was. Sorry, this is Paula Abdomen. Which actually reminds me a little bit, because I was watching. I was making the show notes last night, and there was J-Lo was on Britain's Got Talent, which the rest of the family were watching, and she came on and she just basically let everything hang out on only post-Watershed. It was really kind of a bit like, whoa, I don't need to see that. Okay, it's all right. I get it. You've got a really big ass. Okay, that's fine. I can see almost all of it. Anyway,
I think the cleverest one I've seen fly past in the chat room so far is Ben Without Cat, because it's a double whammy. Because Curiosity Killed the Cat singer was also called Ben.
That's true.
If you so that's a kind of a double.
We can't prejudge.
Whammy.
We've just got to hold on. I know, Dave. What was
okay, sorry.
Do people send you? Do you find that if you get sent a session? Because that's always the tricky thing. When you send a session to somebody, you tend to tidy it up, colour code it, kind of make all the tracks obvious and what have you. Do you think that kind of breaks down some of the nifty processing that you would normally see, or do you get a chance to look at that sort of? So if someone sends you a song, for instance.
Actually, do you want to hear something? This is a big sordid secret of mine, or a strange secret of mine. I worked for a producer for quite a while, and he made, but I worked out all the chord structures and whatnot because he was a producer and not a musician. We made gay high energy tracks of classic hits,
right?
Which was really fascinating because all the women wanted to sound like Matey Boy from Bronski Beat, like high pitched,
yeah,
and all the guys wanted to sound like KD Lang. No, hang on. All the women wanted to sound like Kate. Anyway, it was hilarious. And at one point, KD Lang actually came in the studio.
Oh, man.
And these guys in check shirts and very tight jeans were kind of literally having to cross their legs. They were so excited.
I think KD Lang is one of the finest singers on the planet, actually. I really do. I don't know what she's like these days, but she's...
It was quite stunning when she kind of just jammed along at one section. It was, I have to say, it was the cleanest, most meticulous studio I've ever been into. Like 909s and S750s, and everything was absolutely
no finger dirt round the parameter wheel.
It was brilliant. I was the kind of oikist person in there.
It's funny you should say that. I've got because I actually had a period where I was making. It wasn't high energy disco. It was line dance house.
That sounds quite interesting.
Which was I did Ghost Riders in the Sky and dueling banjos.
Excellent.
And
I want to hear dueling banjo.
Dueling banjo. Well, because no, but it was with a banjo player who's a guy called Leon Hunt, who is probably one of the best banjo players in the country, if not wider area. He was taught by Bella Fleck. He wanted to learn banjo so much he just basically bought a ticket to where Bella Fleck lived, turned up and said, "Mr. Fleck, I want you to teach me banjo," and he did. So and he is quite like I say, quite possibly one of the best. So it was just like. And we played it right because he was playing along, and it had to be a click, and it was. I just kind of timed it, and it was just bang on. There was absolutely no variation, and that was just him playing, And it was like, I'm pretty sure that dueling banjos is probably really easy for him to play because I don't know how difficult it is compared to some other things. It just sounds complicated, but I don't know if it. But it did actually. It made it onto an album called "Now That's What I Call Line Dance."
Hey, fantastic!
I can't remember whether it. But it was only a couple of days' work, but it was quite a laugh. But that's my guilty secret. I don't think anybody would have learned much about that session if I'd sent it to them, though. Apart from that, this guy could really play banjo.
I really like that idea of kind of, okay, so let's see how this works. In fact, it's quite a challenge. It irritates me when I can't work out exactly what's going on. And I have been known to kind of sit there all night and work out, okay, where is that weird note coming from within that chord?
The lost note.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nick Rhodes' stuff would drive you mental then, probably.
There is one chord, in fact,
he puts a finger in the middle of everything. He'll work out the chord and then just go, let's do that. And you go, oh.
Yeah,
interesting.
No, there's a track that Gaz is doing with Carl, it's an Underworld track that they do, and the pianist, Pete Chilvers, he's throwing a couple of... And in fact, when I went to see them at the Union Chapel gig, I made him write it down for me, exactly what he was playing, so I could go... Because it had been driving me nuts. It's just like this one chord. Anyway, yes, no, I really enjoy those kind of things.
I was doing I was working on a remix last night, and at the end of the chorus section, I wanted to get out of the chorus section and back into a slightly different... I don't know if it's a different key, but certainly a different musical place. So I put a pitch bend on the bass line, and then I burned the whole thing to disk and sent it as an MP3, and then I listened back to it, and because I put the pitch bend at the front of a region, the next region that played was still on +2 pitch bend, so the whole of the rest of the track was in this really weird tuning, and I was like going, there's something really wrong here. It took me ages to work it out because I was tired. But yeah, it makes you wonder if people have these accidents and then they end up in things, and then we sort of try to decipher it, and maybe they don't even know what happened.
Yeah, it's like that whole thing about people analysing poetry, isn't it? And kind of great literature or paintings, and half the time it's just like, yeah, that'll do, and then figure it out afterwards, and then you learn how to talk it up and make it sound like it's very kind of philosophical. And
there was a fantastic program on that note. There was fantastic that Bowie 5 years program. I don't know whether you saw that the other night, but it's Wakeman talking about going through life on Mars and all the various key changes in there. And I remember when somebody put that in front of me like a million years ago and went, just play this. I mean, I had no score in front of me, just to kind of play it by ear, and I was there for hours and hours. It's like a bloody Sudoku puzzle, but for musos.
Apparently, that's quite funny you should say that. Apparently, in the 70s, it was 80s, Stuart McConey, who used to write for NME, this is part of it, started the rumour that David Bowie invented Connect 4.
And that Bob Holness played sax on Baker Street. That was his other one, wasn't it?
That's just superb rumours. I like that sort of thing. Maybe I'm going to have that. That's going to be next week's competition. Yeah, invent an implausible music rumour. Anyway, if you want to check out more of that stuff, because I do these online courses, you want to go to pointblank.com, I believe it is, and there's Point Blank Music. I better just check that actually, because I don't.
Very good. Very, very good, actually.
Yeah, they do. It's actually pointblanklondon.com. If I just go here, you should be able to. I'll just drop it down.
I'm going to change my name next week. Sledge Spears.
Sledge Spears.
Yes.
Sister Sludge.
That's a good one.
Excuse me. Yeah, so check that out. They've got some courses. I'm sure you can buy it in various different modules and what have you. And anyway, that was kind of a bit of fun.
Someone said in the chat room that Bob Holness was the first James Bond. I think that's actually true.
Really? I don't think that's true.
I don't know. I think it is, because there was that weird British film that was made of James Bond before this sort of real blockbuster series started, and there were a couple that were made with very unlikely actors.
David Niven.
David Niven might. Yeah, that's. Imagine not being the James Bond that actually cut you. I was the bloke I was the pilot James Bond. I didn't make it into the full series. Anyway, let's get on to some more. Yes, this is reference tracks. It's again another great source, which was from Reddit. If I bring this up, I can pop it in there. This is frequently asked. Mix engineers, what are your favourite reference mixes? And this was quite interesting because obviously. I completely misunderstood because I didn't pay any attention to what I'd actually sent out previously. And I thought, Mark, that one I played by Aluna George was yours, just as a guess, because I thought, that's quite a good track and a good video. But that's an interesting point. So, when you get someone, you need to listen, because we've talked about monitors and we've talked about what you use, Mark, but, to get familiar with a system or a room or whatever, or a PA, what is it? I mean, I know most people used to play Simply Red or something equally as for testing PAs. So, Dave, what do you use?
Oh, blimey. I've got I've probably got 4 or 5 that I go to. Jellyfish, Spilt Milk, actually, that's one, definitely. Talk After the Flood, definitely. And Michel Cello, a track called The Way, which has just got this incredibly punchy bottom end. So all of those, generally a couple of hundred.
It's probably good to have a selection, because not many tracks have everything, do they, I suppose?
I find it really good, particularly when auditioning things like D2A converters or speakers and stuff like that. We'll go back through a bit of Stevie Wonder, and then also cross-reference it with something kind of modern but sort of fairly...
Oh, yes, that's the other one, isn't it? The other one is, oh, God, what's his name? Steely Dan. Firefly. Donald Fagen.
No. Everyone goes for Gaucho or something, don't they?
Ruby.
Yeah.
I
think I'd go for Little Feat, actually, because that was all engineered by George Massenburg, wasn't it? And some of those records sound absolutely amazing. That's really, if you're not familiar with Little Feat, check them out. Things like Down Below the Borderline. They were the sort of people who started off that kind of whole Southern Shuffle sort of vibe. The 6/8. I think they might have been prior. Or did Bernard Purdie play on some of those tracks? I'm not sure. He may have done.
Oh, I forgot.
But anyway, that's where some of that stuff sounds really beautiful. And the drum, there's a drum solo in, I think it might be Down Below the Borderline. I forget now. It's a long time since I've listened to it, which just sounds gorgeous. And yeah, George Massenburg, I think he did engineer those.
I'm trying to think who the Spilt Milk guy was. It's going to drive me nuts now.
Oh,
but honestly,
it'll come to you. It'll come to you. What about you then, Mark? What do you tend to kind of listen to when you kind of just want to check out a room or a PA or any of the above?
What do I kind of listen to? Because I make electronic music and because I mix in a computer, I tend to listen to things which have been mixed in computers. So one of my favourite tracks is Felix the House Cat. Because that track is so extreme. The sounds in it are so extreme because it's all been done. I think it was done in Cubase, and I don't think it went through a desk. So all
Which
of
one
the
was it called? We All Want to Be Prince? Do you remember what the track was?
I
was just trying to play a little section of it.
It goes dun 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 dun.
Okay. I can't type that into YouTube, unfortunately. Never mind. I'll just play one randomly.
I can't remember what the name of the track is. I've got it in my iTunes. I could probably look at iTunes.
Oh, I don't.
So I'm going to show you a few things.
I don't want to hear the ad. I just want to. You carry on.
But then other things. I love Rain Tree Crow because there's something about the way that's produced, which is.
I don't know if it's that, is it? That doesn't sound very extreme. Okay. A Rain Tree Crow, yes.
It's the first thing Felix the House Cat did, which is it's like Harlot, I think it's called.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it, but I'm not having much luck.
I also like the Cardigans, a Raise and Rewind, and that's because it's got like a really kind of very, very distorted bass that doesn't take up any space in a really interesting way. And then I think that kind of tests out that kind of area of the PA because you don't want that to, or any speakers. I don't want that to be muddy. I want to hear what's going on in those frequencies.
Yeah, I got you.
And then I love Hella Good because that's really beautifully produced. And if you put that on, that gives you a good sense of...
Again, that's mixed by Spike Stent. That's mixed by Mark Spike Stent, I think. That
Is
no
it?
doubt stuff.
Well, if anything's been mixed by Spike Stent, I probably like it.
Yes, I think those are all good choices.
Madonna's music is also good because it's electronic. It's been mixed in a computer. It's highlighting the areas of sound which I want to kind of reference and check, and where I'd like my things
that was Mark
to be
Spike
as well.
Stent too. And he makes he works on SSL, or used to work on an SSL, because there was a Goldfrapp album I did where we worked with Spike Stent, and I actually went up to Olympic when it was still there and was involved in the sessions, just helping them get the stuff out of the computer and going, oh yeah, that's the bit, this needs to come out. And he would ask me, I was sort of programming assistant on it. for a couple of days while they set it all up, and that that he'd just done music at that point or one before, I think. Yeah.
And then, of course, my biggest problem is if I set up a system listening to those things and then I play the guitar gets kind of, I like a nice 70s guitar sound. It just ends up bleeding into everything and sounding absolutely awful. So I'll then contrast that by listening to things probably, my guess is that most of the things I like have been mixed by Ken Scott. So lots of the Bowie things that he mixed. I love All the Young Dudes by Mott the Hoople. I might put that on really loud. And I might listen to some Susie and the Banshees as well, particularly Happy House or Spellbound, because those things, the way the drums are.
And there's also lots of really
lots
of really complex mid in those with all the sort of chorus and the flanges and the multi-layered guitars, aren't there? It's quite detailed.
Well, I like the snare sound.
Right.
So if I'm hearing the snare sound and the snare sounds right to me on a set of speakers, then I know that I can go into that area. If I'm trying to get my drums to sound good, I want them to be in that kind of area. So
got you.
And there are tracks that I know really well because I've listened to. I've probably listened to those tracks or some of those tracks for like 30 years or whatever. So I sort of know what they're going to sound like.
What am I trying to do?
I also have some. There's a fabulous website which has reference piano tracks, which is a piano player with a set of really high end, and I think they're Earthworks mics, like put on it, and they've been recorded at like 192 24-bit, and they're absolutely pure and kind of perfect. And if you put them on and you listen to that, and it sounds like a piano in a room, then you're halfway there, I think.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea because it's a full range instrument as well.
Yeah,
I guess that's a good idea.
And really for dynamics as well, for and hearing what's kind of going on when the dynamics are going on, I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I think, I tend to go for stuff. Well, I'm not that I'm really operating in that world anymore, but I did have a think about it. I sort of did most of the premix work for a track called White Horse for Golf Rap, and they pushed the faders up and kind of did what they did, but they used my drum submix and as the kind of core of it. So I know that really well because I had to program it in great detail. So I listened to that because it's such a familiar sound, because I must have heard it about 1 million times. K.D. Lang, anything off the Ingenue album, which I've said 1 million times, it's just such an amazingly recorded record. If you can hear that level of detail, then it definitely helps. And there was a track that I did, which I was trying to find. It was by a band called Sunner, called Burning Holes, and it's got an analog mix, which is just loads of synths and stuff. And I really, I only found it again this afternoon because I was wondering what happened to it. And I definitely, because that had a very familiar sound. It had loads of bottom end, and I know there was too much on it, so I could kind of gauge it from that. But yeah, I think it's important to have some kind of reference stuff, though, isn't it? For sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Another bonkers controller. Yeah. Or we could do what's the time? It's 5 o'clock. We could do the new Daft Punk album because obviously, this is everywhere, and we sort of ignored it a little bit. And it was only because I was talking to Rich about it, because obviously Rich Hilton is a regular guest on the show, and he plays with Nile Rodgers, and Nile Rodgers obviously played guitar on Get Lucky, which is the kind of first single, which is everywhere, and it's the fastest selling record of the year. It's outsold everything. It's had the most streams on Spotify. This is Random Access Memories right here. This is the two robots, and they've done a brilliant job because basically no one will ever know who they are anymore because they've just covered their faces up with these helmets. So it could be anybody showing up because presumably they don't have to talk either. They could just show up and kind of shake hands like a kind of Mickey Mouse at Disneyland where they're not allowed to talk. So you never know who it is. It could be anybody.
It's like Stig, isn't it, from Top Gear?
Yeah, it's that kind of thing because they're wearing sort of very disco. Let's see if there are some pictures. I did actually find. Yeah, there's a teaser which I can probably play a little bit of. Which if I go here. Oh lordy, I don't know what that is. That doesn't sound right, does it? Something's playing, but I don't know what it is. Help!
That's the middle.
What's that? Where's that coming from? Is that this? God, I don't know what that is. Oh, it might be that. Yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, this is the video that they did, which was the kind of just them, like they got the first wax cut They've just waxed a hottie and they're checking it out on the state of the art, and then it starts and they put the record on and they're all roboty and everything, which is it's just a great bit of marketing. But the other thing that's quite interesting about this, and this is something that Rich was talking about as well, you know, is the idea that it's been this organically produced disco record, which I'm sure can't be the case, because I'm pretty sure most of the people will have just done their overdubs and they put it together in a computer and tried to make it sound organic. But it's a brilliant piece of marketing. I know, Dave, I noticed there was some discussion with you about what your thoughts were of the new album. What do you make of it?
It's going to be a short topic. I'm completely indifferent to it, I have to say. What I need to do, I'm destined to do some serious decorating over the weekend, so maybe I should just kind of play it a few times while I'm decorating. But I know we had the brief conversation with Val Muso, Rob, and I don't know, I like this idea that they've gone for session musos and big expensive studio bits of gear and all the rest of it, but you know, half of it, it's what I find quite entertaining is how the press have really jumped on that, and how that has become the kind of focus of everything, and how, you know, and I think, I don't know, I just, you know, it really has kind of opinions just totally polarized, isn't it?
Well, like any good pop release should, I suppose. I mean, it's...
yeah, and I like that. And it's that idea that I think in a lot of ways, you know, Daft Punk were kind of always seen as the kind of hip underground people, and this clearly isn't that. But I mean, they are, you know, there's a lot of mastery gone on. But I don't know, it just kind of, maybe it's just because it's not what I'm into, but at this moment in time, but it's kind of left me cold.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, it has caused. I mean, I like the sounds and everything. I mean, that's the only single I've really sort of listened to. I mean, there's some quite interesting collaborative videos.
The vocoder clavy stuff is beautiful.
What would
and obviously, anything with Niall on is just always got a groove.
Yeah. What would they have used, that vocoder? Because it's such a unique, specific sound, right?
Oh, the main vocoder that runs through the thing is the Sennheiser, the same one that Herbie Hancock used on Sunlight and Feet Don't Fail Me Now. Which again is a kind of, it's really nice to hear that, because it's very distinctive, but it just, you know what my missus thinks of vocoders.
Yeah, she won't have it on, and she won't have it on in the album.
It also reminded me of a time when I was totally obsessed with that Herbie Hancock Sunlight album, and in particular Feet Don't Fail Me Now. You know, I Thought It Was You and all those kind of things. And my folks were just like, you know, I seem to remember me getting into my dad's car, him giving me a lift, me putting the cassette of that into the cassette machine, turning it up, and I seem to remember my dad just taking it out and throwing it out the window because of that annoying noise. So yeah, it's all very interesting.
Well, I think there's been some interest, because it looks like, you know, Niall obviously got on with the two guys, and there was some talk. I was digging around. It's apparently Niall told the Daily Star newspaper recently, "I recently found a treasure trove of old stuff I wrote years ago that's been hidden in a studio vault. It's unreleased material from the late 70s and early 80s, and has to see the light of day. Especially now I've met some producers that I trust, like Daft Punk." So it'd be kind of interesting to see, you know, how that sort of came out. Because obviously Niall is always sort of on top form, but now I guess it sort of brought him right into focus again, because he's, you know, everybody's hearing what a bloody great guitarist he is, amongst other things.
Yeah.
Mark, have you heard it?
I have heard it.
What do you
Somebody
think?
recommended that I should listen to it. They said, "Have you heard the new Daft Punk album?" And I went, "No." And I put it on, and I listened to the whole thing, and I went, "Yeah, it's all right." And anything with Niall on it, I kind of went, "Wow, this is really kind of groovy." And that's actually how I met Rich Hilton, because Niall did some work with Duran Duran, and Rich is Niall's sort of sound engineer and programmer. So I met Niall when he was doing that, and just to stand next to him when he's playing the guitar, it is like one of those all the hairs on the back of the neck kind of moments, and you just kind of like, wow. And then I kind of got on with like whatever I was doing that particular day, and then I went, hang on, there's one song on there I want to hear again. And I went back, and it's Get Lucky, and I put it back on, and then I listened to it, and then it was in my head as an earworm, and it just stayed in my head and every time anyone mentions Daft Punk, it's just like,
It triggers off.
So it's unbelievably catchy.
Yeah, they do drive it home with vengeance, don't they? Yeah.
And then having analysed it, some of their turnarounds, the way they get from bridge to chorus and then back out and then back into verse are so clever. And those little twisty little, and like Dave says, the clavy things with the little funky vocoder things. It's just like, wow, that's such a hook. There's so many hooks that like link the things together. And then this relentless hook. And then I think the fact that they haven't overly tuned the vocals and it sounds like human beings singing, it's like, this is the new sound. I'm really convinced that we're sick of vocoders now, and that's got to stop, and we're all going to go back in the direction of having human beings singing slightly out of tune and stacking vocals and getting that kind of like, oh, there's lots of people here, it's a party vibe going,
yeah,
you know,
maybe you're right.
Rather than, oh, there's lots of robots here, it's a bit clinical and kind of like, you know.
Well, it's quite ironic that they dress as robots. Then, if that's the case, it's quite maybe that.
Maybe.
I know they are French, aren't they? And they do, you know. I mean, let's be honest. It's a French national trait is the enjoyment of those kind of philosophical conundrums, shall we say?
Well, the other thing it reminds me of is when I went to the south of France with Duran Duran in 2001 to start the album with the 5 original members. We were in a villa in Saint-Tropez, which meant, of course, we went to lots of nightclubs in Saint-Tropez. And a big record at the time was that, ooh, baby, the music sounds better with you. Like that whole French disco kind of Saint-Tropez kind of upmarket, you know, we're doing very expensive cocaine instead of like snorting cheap speed kind of market, you know, drinking Cristal. I mean, that kind of world... this music is very much in that kind of world, and it's sort of it sounds much the same as it did 10 years ago, doesn't it, really, or so? And they've just done a very good job of getting that feel of being in that club. And somebody had said to me, like, what do you think of it? And I said, well, it's kind of okay, but it would sound much better if I was in the Saint-Tropez nightclub than it does in my kitchen. But
it is a great sounding record in a club. That, I mean, it's just, and the compression and what have you on it is brutal, but it really does sound a really, really, I mean, it's a great sounding. I mean, that's their signature track, isn't it, really? I mean, that's kind of...
It's the track that's the earworm that you just can't get. Once you've heard it, it's very difficult to dislodge that from your consciousness. Yeah. But the same as that, the music, you know, that, ooh, baby, the music sounds better with you thing. I mean, that is lodged in my consciousness even after 12, 13 years. It's still, more than that even. When did that record come out?
It was
99 or something?
I don't know.
But I mean, if I think about that record, I can hear most of it clearly in my head. Like, it's almost like it's playing in the room. So, I mean, if for something to be that lodged, if I listen to Daft Punk a few more times, I imagine this will be as lodged as that. I've got their first album, which I listened to a lot, but I can't recall really any particular track from that. So maybe they've just done something a bit more clever, perhaps.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, I think from what there's the piece by George when they're talking about Giorgio Moroder. There's because they have an interview with Nile Rodgers, an interview with Giorgio Moroder, and he's talking about them saying how finicky and precise they are. So I'm sure there's a whole lot of stuff gone into that. I tell you what, I really, really like on that track, and it's almost a hook in itself. It's the hi-hat part. The hi-hats just sound this is Get Lucky. Just sound really, really good, and I don't know. I was talking to Rich about this and wondering whether or not they maps use the old trick of, you know, putting the hi-hats through like the Drama gate, so everything goes slightly. It's got a little bit. They put attack onto drums and to hi-hats and cymbals and things by putting it through gates and precisely doing it. I mean, I'm sure they're probably not using hardware for that kind of stuff, but all those kind of tricks. And one of the things that's quite interesting in this piece also about Niall, that Niall told the newspaper, he said that, you know, they actually... He told them a load of chic tricks, which I think is a great term. So, you know, a lot of the sort of nifty things they used to do to kind of spice up their mixes and get things sounding the way. I think he kind of chatted to them about it. And that was... I like the idea of them kind of, you know, getting all that information and applying it. Because some of those things... I mean, there aren't going to be very many engineers around or producers around that can remember how to do that kind of stuff. and how they did those things and how you gate this off that to get that and what have you. So, you know, I like the idea of that actually kind of being passed down to it's a bit of a romantic notion.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Niles, this amazing self-publicist though, isn't he? I mean, how long was Rich here? Like 2 days or something?
Yeah.
And in that time, Niall must have been on like about 20 radio shows. I was like, I'm glad he does it, but I was like, how does he do this? I mean, he's no spring chicken anymore. It was just amazing. And really interesting stuff, you know. I think if I'd have been Mark in that room, I'd have just kind of soaked up everything like a sponge.
I think the thing about him is because, you know, he's been around a while, he's just got an endless source of anecdotes. So it just...
his bio was just the most amazing thing I've read. You know,
I've got to go. I'm going to have to read that. I have to wait for the audiobook because I just can't. The thing is now I can't read normal books because I fall asleep really quickly. It's just because you know, my tired old eyes. It's just because I'm where I hold a book, it's just in the wrong place for the difference between these glasses and my close-up glasses, which is making me sound like incredibly old git, but that's just the way it goes.
I've just bought these from the boot sale. I'm on +2 now.
Well, there you go.
I'm sort of slowly noticing that things have to go further and further away, but now I've noticed that even with the glasses on, they're far away, and I'm thinking, like, this isn't so good, really, is it? I maybe need the next one up.
Maybe you do. I've just got to say, there was another topic here, because obviously we had we had a post. We've been sort of getting these blog posts, guest posts in, and Ed Eagan, who's the guy who's done a lot of work on the Huck and Continuum kind of sound engine, amongst other things, has got a massive surge modular system. He sent us in a piece which has gone absolutely viral. It's bonkers. I've just I can drop it here. This is Holy Schmidt Quality Matters. This is the kind of notion that this synthesizer is almost the most expensive synthesizer and unattainable. But the only reason it is because it's unashamedly expensive. And the thrust of his kind of essay is that essentially we do not pay enough, and we expect to get so much stuff, but actually, you know, it takes a lot of money to kind of create these things, and we're essentially asking for things to be paid for too cheaply. And there are endless comments, and some of them are quite interesting, particularly about the idea if you play the double bass, for instance, or any kind of large string instrument, you're going to be paying thousands, and $5,000 is a cheap double bass, you know. So the thought of paying $20,000 for a Schmidt, which is an incredibly complicated piece of equipment, is next to nothing. But this is more the representation. And Dave, I know if you wanted to come in on this, Synthtopia sort of posted it as well, and it's also debated it got a load of debate on that. But it was essentially, are musicians too cheap to pay for good stuff? I mean, you are a vendor, obviously, so...
Yeah, and one of... I mean, where do I even start on this subject? I was very tempted to go on at the end of everybody else's post and just go, ooh, because people don't half get hit up about stuff like this, and sometimes with good cause. But you know, the bottom line is they're all tools and they're all valid, and in the hands of the right person, everything has great possibilities. I really like Ed. I like his demo stuff. I love the Hack and Continuum, so I kind of see where he's coming from with this. What I found really fascinating about this is that we've been approached by several hardware companies to collaborate on things, and we won't get involved. I feel very passionate about landfill. I think we have a responsibility nowadays to stop this massive turnaround of basically just using up resources for the sake of it, for the sake of a fast buck. So in the past, where I've been, you know, reasonably scathing on this whole everybody chasing the lowest price point, it's normally been motivated by that. And whilst and you have to understand to a degree, I am a little bit of a freak. I drive a 40-year-old car that I spend a disproportionate amount of money on trying to maintain. We have mountains of old gear that we also spend a disproportionate amount of money on trying to maintain. So for me, the idea of kind of preserving this old gear is just so embedded in my psyche. You know, my wife upcycles old furniture, so it's very much a part of our lives. So I hate to see this kind of waste for the sake of it, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of love software, even though I advocate, you know, I love hardware. One of the reasons why I love software is that we're not, you know, killing we're not just using natural resources for the sake of a quick buck. Although there is an argument that, you know, big cloud farms and all the rest of it are causing as much damage as, you know, various mines, metal mines and stuff like that. So I found this really, really fascinating. And what I was surprised was that was hardly raised as an issue. It just seemed to be, on one hand, people saying, actually, you can't make good music on cheap pieces of kit, which you can, but the chances are it's going to be for a limited time. And then on the other hand, people saying, oh, you know, the thing is expensive pieces of kit are the preserve of the elitists, which I don't think is necessarily true either. So that's my tuppence worth. And I'm glad we got to that point, because that was quite important to me to say that.
Good. Well, I'm glad you got that off your chest. And I'm tend to agree, really, because everybody gets really excited about these kind of fast, cheap stuff, which, you know, the mass market is by nature driven by these kind of things. But it does, yes, the packaging and all of those things and the shipping, it just sort of starts to get a little bit, just generates waste and resources, and that is problematic. But
I think with, sorry,
yeah,
I think with, you know, we come from a generation where if you bought something like a CS80, you know, that was at least a year's worth of money, and you would have to devote all of your time to learn that particular instrument inside out. And that's the same for all of this. You know, the reason we got the modular is that we really want to explore that whole thing. So it's not a kind of flippant instrument, whereas I think now with everything being cheap, people, there is a term we have here in that, you know, a lot of cases, we talked about this with Gem and stuff, people become kind of preset junkies. No one really explores. And I think in some cases, when you make that serious investment in a piece of gear, you really feel obliged to explore it to the absolute limit. And that's creative.
Yeah, I think that is a fair point. And that was kind of the thrust of his argument as well, but he was getting quite a lot of flack and a lot of support. So it's a very polarised argument, but it's an interesting one. I know
it's fantastic that people get so animated.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And obviously more page use for us, which is also great. But, you know, I'm glad that we were able to give it a voice. So, I don't know, Mark, what do you kind of make of it?
I think that certain instruments become like almost beautiful pieces of art or furniture or something. So I think really the fact that the LEDs change colour is possibly the most important thing. No, sorry, I'm being really flippant. No, I mean, if I had the money to buy things like that and I wanted to kind of create that beautiful studio environment, you know, like when you walk into a professional studio and it's all like light wood and the desk's laid out in front of you and the speakers are up in the wall, and you're just kind of in there and you sort of feel like, wow, I've just walked into the lap of luxury.
Well, it makes you feel focused, doesn't it?
It makes me feel like, hey, I'm a musician and I've got a record deal and I'm making I'm making a record and my label are paying for all this. Of course, they're not. You are, but you sort of feel it has a in the psyche. It has a place in the psyche for getting you into the frame of mind for writing in that way. So I think if you have, I mean, in Dave's world, Dave's psyche is that he's surrounded by beautiful old instruments, which in a sense, the aesthetic of that is going to put him in a certain place. If I was to suddenly say, you know what, I'm going to start making software synths, and I was to do it in my back garden shed, and I was sitting out there with a load of spiders and stuff, I don't think my software synths would have the same quality as someone who's sitting in a room full of real old synths. There's an essence of that kind of relationship that's going to end up in the software. So when I buy a piece of software from Dave, it's going to have something of that vibe about it. So in terms of like this hardware synth, there's a sort of a quality and a kind of a whole feel to that end of the market that's going to put you in a certain frame of mind when you're using it. And I think that's where its true value lies, that it's going to take you, it's the relationship between man and machine, isn't it? If I buy something for $39 from Walmart and it's got a MIDI socket on it and I start trying to write music on that, the frame of mind I'm in is not going to be the same as the frame of mind I'm in if I'm playing something which is beautifully textured and like made of wonderful wood.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think there is something to be said also, though, that sometimes these flagship instruments, which try to achieve so much, are not always finished. And you end up with something, you're investing, and you end up with something, you know, it's like, I'm thinking of the Jomox Sunsin, you know, which is, on paper, amazing. But, you know, I don't know what happened to the OS. I remember reviewing it, and it wasn't working properly then. And
The
I
Wave.
noticed, yeah,
Well, that's what I was going to say, the Waldorf Wave.
There are...
I mean, my friend Pat, he's the same age as my dad, actually, so he's 80 years old. So, and he used to work in Argents as a keyboard salesman maybe 30 years ago. And then he retired, and he just got into buying and selling synths from his flat in Chelsea. And actually, I think he knows your lot, Dave. I think he sold synths to Carl or someone from that camp, certainly. I mean, they used to go and see him, and he just like knew all the people who were in kind of synth bands and used to buy and sell stuff. But I mean, he was a pensioner living in a little kind of a 2-up flat in Chelsea. In a council estate, and he invested basically his entire life savings in a Waldorf Wave, and had this. You'd walk into his flat, and he'd got like you walk in, you'd got the bathroom and the kitchen on the left, and then he had a living room which was sort of also the bedroom, so it was a tiny little flat, and then right in the middle of the flat would be like this huge Waldorf Wave thing that he'd spent $7 or $8 grand on, and I'd be thinking like, my God. You know, that it just seemed like a crazy thing to do, but to him it was like the holy grail, and it was like, you know, it was he used to buy and sell guitars as well. I suppose this is where I get that analogy from, that like he'd have like Gibson ES, whatever they're called, you know, the really old jazz guitars from the 1940s hanging on the wall, and it's kind of in the same vein, isn't it? When something's made beautifully out of really nice kind of wood, it becomes, you know, like an art piece, I suppose.
You know, I'd like to see like an end-to-end life of synthesizers or electronic instruments, you know, like you have in cars. Yeah. And then it transpires that, you know, something like a Prius isn't actually as environmentally friendly as you thought it was, because it's made of all sorts of weird composite plastics, which, you know, there's been an awful lot of weird, strange manufacturing processes in. And it turns out, you know, Wrangler Jeep, because it's made of wrought iron, seems to be the you know, has the most efficient end-to-end life. I'd love to see a similar kind of thing in electronic instruments. It'd be really fascinating. I would imagine the plastic modular would work.
The plastic ones would have to be made out of recyclable plastic then, wouldn't they? I mean, most of these cheap, hard plastics aren't recyclable. They can't be melted.
I suppose the tricky part is that, once they warm up and you start kind of weighing on them, they start sort of melting like cheap shopping bags. They disintegrate. There's only a certain amount of life. You can only play them for so long before they start to degrade, and you end up with just a sort of pile of.
Well, I mean, all joking aside, I mean, I was looking K2000s on eBay the other day, and I sort of thought, oh, hang on a minute, that might be useful to have, and. I looked at it, went for like 80 quid or something, but the main part of the advert said that the keys had gone yellow. So the thing worked perfectly, except the keys weren't white anymore, they were yellow. So one has to think that the plastic had degraded in such a way that the keys had changed colour. And I've seen that on...
I think it's to do with sunlight. Yeah, no, I've got some synthesizers here with yellow keys. You know, it does happen. Audio Node says in the chat room, obviously, yes, apparently the new MS-20 couldn't be exactly reproduced because of ROHS standards. Yeah, they couldn't use cadmium, they couldn't use certain things, which meant that those components were no longer available. And that's those sort of things are issues. But that's good, right? Because that means, you know, I mean, the MS-20 is built and lasts like a tank, but I know it might be emanating some sort of ghastly chemical into my work environment, slowly releasing cadmium rays or whatever they are. So it might not be doing me. I mean, unfortunately, I don't play it all that much. But yeah, there's an interesting. Yeah, Mr. Cos says in the chat room, it's a chemical in the plastic reacting with the sunlight. So I guess that's why it's a uniform yellowness generally. But I've got it here. You can't see it, but. This is no longer as white as it was, and I did have it in the window for a little bit. This is the Korg Nano Control, which is brilliant. It's what I use to control the switching for this, and that's gone a bit yellow. So yeah.
Who's Zen Artist in the chat room says he wants to get an old Powers PC PowerBook. But I would recommend the old iMac, the Tangerine iMacs, because I bought one of those off eBay for £5 and it works perfectly well. I mean, computing's a weird area, isn't it? The reason why computers don't work anymore is because everybody upgrades everything so quickly that the newer software that everything's running won't work properly on the older.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I would. Maybe, but I mean, like for instance, this Mac Pro here is probably a 2008, 2009 model. That's pretty.
Is that an Intel machine?
Yeah, it's
right. So what happened with Adobe and Apple is interesting because everything prior to Intel machines, all the PowerPC machines no longer run Flash properly because they just stopped updating it because Apple won't put anything Flash in any of their iPhones, iPads, or anything like that. And then Adobe, in sort of retaliation, have decided to sort of drop support for any of their earlier stuff. Now, that is a huge landfill-creating problem because it renders loads and loads of machines obsolete before their time. In other words, the processors are probably perfectly capable of running some of these things, but because they're running in some weird emulation mode, because nobody will write drivers or software for them anymore, means that they can no longer run these things, and they end up being binned before their time.
No, you're absolutely right.
I think manufacturers should be called to task on that if people identify those kind of things, and they should not allow that to happen. And they should say, well, you're making all this money, you should invest back in those things to make sure they don't go into landfill. Phil.
Speaking of my old Nano Control, since I picked it up and showed it to the camera, it no longer is switching shots. So I'm afraid. So I'm hoping it's going to continue to work because it's like the heart of my system. I'll have to switch to using the iPad for it. But it's probably, in that case, a good time to stop because nothing is actually nothing is working anymore. But it feels like it's probably a good time. But you made some very good points there, and unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to come to you for your for goodbyes unless I can figure out a way to. I might be able to do it. I have to do it by mouse. Let's see if I can do that. So if I switch that one off, and I switch. Oh no, that's going to be impossible. Sorry about this. That's just not going to work. But suffice to say. That'll be the end of the show then. Technology has brought it to a premature end, although it was about time, and I have got to rush back and do some stuff. But I want to say thank you very much to our guests. Dave Spears, who I can't switch to, but I can assure you is looking devilishly handsome in front.
Of course. Can I just mention something that Chris asked me to mention at the beginning of the show? 64-bit VSM and M-Tron Pro is out, and as a way of saying thank you for waiting, we've done a couple of freebie expansion packs. One's the Philips Philicorder, which is a great little organ, and the other one is the Hohner bass. And I'm there, and I just saw me.
Yes, it just came out. I just unplugged it and plugged it in again. That's the good one.
So it's not consigned to landfill.
No, it's not. This been getting good value out of this. And of course, okay, so yeah, 64-bit. There you go. GeForceSoftware.com. Go get them. Do that stuff. And also, thank you very much to Mark Tinley for being in there as well this week and for sharing your findings.
Rants, yeah.
Well, your findings on the Mac Pro book. I think that's right. ProBook Mac, sorry. And we'll have a little article on that if you want to find out more what Mark's up to, likebeing.com. Thank you very much, Mark.
Very welcome. I'm sure I was meant to say something else, but I can't remember what it was. So.
Ah, well. And of course, we want to say thank you very much to our show sponsors. Go get your free download at isotopeiris.com. I've just actually had an email from Kim at Isotope saying, no, let's not go with the 80s one. How about this? But obviously it's too late, so I'm going to go with we want to hear 80s tribute bands, kind of imaginary ones. So it's essentially funny ones. Leave them in the comments below, either on YouTube or when we post this video up on the Sonic State comments system as well. And the one that we like the most will win a copy of Iris, and maybe there'll be another competition at some point in the future. But once again, I want to say thank you very much to everybody. This was Sonic Talk number 315. And, oh yes, come and see us again live next week. We broadcast every week, sonicstate.com/live. So that's it. I'm just going to press stop.